Namur. Bonjour, Kik.
Hello.
Merci.
On commence.
Hello, stranger. You're standing just 1 meter away, but you might as well be on another planet. We mostly connect online through images and videos. Hello. Hello. But the way we socialize is the foundation. What would it take to break the spell? Beyond our screens, in real life. Let's revive the human spirit. Disrupt the everyday with radical acts of empathy and care. It feels strange to smile with a stranger, to dance with a stranger, to make music with a stranger. But joy is not frivolous. Joy connects us. Right now, we need that. Enchanted moments as a form of resistance. Call it art, call it infrastructure. Whatever you call it, strangers need strange moments together. And this is what we do.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. I'm Mouna, Andraos.
I'm Melissa Mongiat. And it's been 15 years of Daily Tous les Jours, a studio we founded together back in 2010. We're based in Montreal, Canada, and we co-run an art and design practice that mixes performance, urban design, technology in public space. So we create large-scale interactive installations reflecting on how we live together.
Really, from the beginning in 2010, our kind of passion and the reason why we started to work was to try to respond to the world around us. We were inspired, amongst other things, by a quote by new media poet Henri Chopin. When he was asked, what is new media and why do you do what you do? He answered, well, far from being experimental, we are just living with our time.
And that was in 1994. And for a while, our studio, we just had a webpage called Living With Our Time.
And our attempt was always to try to be relevant and respond to what is around us and see how we can contribute as artists. The most important thing for us has really been to be able to connect with people, provide experiences that resonate with them, and to contribute something. So this first project that's there
is a block jam that was created for MUTEC in Montreal. Back in the day, we wanted it to be accessible for all, so we were taking out a musical sequencer and putting it on the street, and people could call in with their phones and use the 9 digits to turn off and on some beats to make sure that everyone could participate, because back in 2010, intelligent phones were not widespread as they are now.
No apps.
No problem.
We explored kind of more and more the power of music and making music, singing together. And that has really become for us a powerful tool, something that can act as a social glue.
And we made sure to make autotune accessible to all. This is in Gold Coast, Australia, for the Commonwealth Games, but it really started in Minnesota. 2 million people gathering in 10 days every year, the Minnesota State Fair. Everyone is super happy to be there, to be a Minnesotan, yet they were not necessarily doing anything together. So we gave them a chance to sing their heart out. And it was quite fruitful because it's still present now. Some 14 years later, every year, they open the fair.
That energy of the giant sing-along is the kind of energy we try to create in our work, and that has inspired us to do that.
And we've been using music as our superpower, because it's quite effective. You don't need to speak the language, you feel it with your entire body. And very good to bring people closer together. We started doing this very intuitively, and through the years we found out the science behind it, that actually playing music together more than playing music alone or watching a show together triggers more dopamine in the brains and all sorts of happy hormones.
And so Daily Tous les Jours is just that. It's trying to transform our everyday into something more magical, bringing a little bit of enchantment in your morning coffee, maybe. Looking and going where people are trying to investigate the city and its potential to connect us through an investigation of its musical capabilities or features that we can unravel, and also how to create bridges between people who wouldn't necessarily connect.
Daily tous les jours means daily every day in French, and it's very much our raw material, how we spend our days, whether the activities, the objects, the banal, that end up being how we spend our lives together. And so we were very happy when the Library of North Boulder in Colorado approached us. When they wanted to, it was a public art commission for the entryway of the library, so it was very much about starting with how do we go to a library? And in my days, it used to be very much like this, but nowadays, a library is a space where anything is possible, and in this particular building by WorkAC in New York has a fab lab, a community kitchen, there's a slide to exit the building, so of course we thought we had to do something quite distinctive to enter. So are we entering like the Monty Python or Gangnam Style, but something that opens up the possibility that we leave our boring self at the door for this space where all the possibilities can be concrete. So the rite of spring of Pina Bausch maybe, and this is the model of WorkAC and our team slowly appearing on it. Oh. Or not. If you're lucky, we're going to mimic what the team is doing.
I was going to say, so basically the pitch and proposal for the jury, this was through a public art competition, involved mostly picture of that, and yeah, you just had it on there.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone from the team kind of mimicking that energy that we wanted people to feel as they walk into the library, dancing and being in a more celebratory mode.
So they're there now, right?
No, not
you can
anymore.
see them. I'm sure you can. Just imagine it a bit better.
There they are. There they are. We
Oh,
don't see them. You
there.
see them.
We don't see them. You see them. Ah, the magic of technology. It's very typical for us.
So the principle is quite simple. It's really inspired in a way by the infrastructure of the city and the lines that separate pavers on the ground, wanting to transform them into something that can be a little more magical. So imagining these lines that as kids we want to maybe skip and not step on.
Or step on, because it's bad luck.
One from the other, as musical opportunities, creating a ramp that makes music as you walk by. This is a quick prototype and concept video we developed, again, to try to express what the intentions were. Little pieces of tape on the ground are our favorite prototyping tool. Our studio is filled with them, to the great dismay of our hosts. And so every line becomes an opportunity for a sound to play.
And depending on the spacing and the music created, you move in different ways.
And so a quick.
So this created Nuage that opened many years later. That little video was made.
Mountains of Colorado in the background. Inviting all living friendly things to enjoy.
Still like this one the best.
Oh my gosh. So we had the chance to bring that project closer to here.
In Heerlen, in the Netherlands, a small town called Heerlens, where there's a big dancing festival. And so we thought it'd be nice that this is near the city hall, right below the alderman's window, so that when thinking about its citizens, it can see all the people dancing together.
The signature project of the studio, which we also started doing about 15 years ago, are this set of musical swings. They're a piece where it emerged as a collaboration, commissioned by a new emerging cultural district called Quartier des Spectacles in Montreal, and they invited us to do an opening event or performance for that specific site. And using the built environment, structures that were already there, we decided to present swings as a result of a collaboration with a biology professor called Luc-Alain Giraldeau from the university right adjacent to the musical swing. And Luc-Alain's specialty was in animal cooperative and social behaviors. And so he became kind of the inspiration to think about how and why is it that us also as of course, the kind of human species, we need to collaborate to survive. And that became a thread through a lot of our work. In the case of the swings, if you swing alone, you make a note. But when you swing in synchronicity with others, collaborate, new harmonies emerge, kind of celebrating the fact that we can achieve more together than alone.
We like the idea of achieving more together than alone, but again here, it was also interesting to see how scientifically synchronous activity impacts the brain. And there's a Belgian musicologist, Edith van Dijk, that notably was talking about rain dances and how they were also about keeping the group together. That when harsh things happen in life, whether it's a drought or wars, we need to stay together, and those dances were very much about just that. So what can we do today to stay together out in public space?
The swings really created this sense of awareness of people around and a lot of opportunities for people to engage with each other and giving them a permission to play with their entire body, inviting adults in as well.
That hadn't swung in so long. There were 21 of them back in Montreal, and they were presented for 10 years, every spring. And we still receive emails about the project.
Yeah, since then, I think the reason why we've continued as artists and creators through the hurdles of technical difficulties and swing bearings that start squeaking and sensors that don't want to cooperate is the feedback we were getting from the public and from people. Expressing, way more than we even initially thought we were putting into these pieces, feeling better, coming together, meeting people they wouldn't meet normally.
So we had a chance to develop a touring edition that was first created for Colorado. We have a strange connection to this US state in the mountains, and it started traveling the world, and it's been a little bit on every continent now. And as the years go by, we realize the importance of the magic that they create in public space, first enabling anyone, all ages, to play, but also in those kind of conversation starters. People feel okay to talk to one another when they're on the swings.
Over the years, and we heard a little bit about the music that's being composed by the people and evolving as it goes, there's one specific kind of encounter. Well, there have been many since, but that struck us at the beginning. This is West Palm Beach in Florida, in the south of the US. And this young man came to us and said, well, I'm from here, you're not. And I grew up, I was born here, and I recognized the codes of who's who. And the specific city we were doing this is one of the cities that has some of the lowest, what they call zip codes, the poorest neighborhoods in the US and some of the very richest neighborhoods, quite close to each other. But he told us people don't mix, they don't come together in their daily lives. And at the site of the art installation, he was the witness of encounters between people who don't usually come together, and expressing how obviously important that was to generate a sense of care for people who are different than us.
So convinced of the impact the swings can have, we started working on permanent editions and entering a whole new ball game of certifications for playgrounds, and developed a modular series that you can see on your left, and also some more bespoke, slightly crazy editions. In this particular edition, we had a chance to develop a new circular seat As we worked with the poly-impaired kids and their caregivers, we developed a backrest, but also noticed that many caregivers preferred to go with their kid on the swing. And this opened up a whole new possibility, not just for them, but also for any a wide audience that can test a new way to play that feels a little bit more relaxing or not, depending on how high you go. And we had a chance to install 3 of them under a jetty-like balcony of the Buchheim Museum in Germany.
A little bit outside of Munich.
Mm.
So it's a little quiet. But every swing will make, again, a series of notes and encouraging kind of musical collaboration.
What we see here, the suspension cables are so long that it really slows down the pace of the music that is created. That makes it even more soothing by the lake. And a little bit like the first time we presented the touring edition in the Colorado mountains, and here by the lake, we saw also the potential of taking in nature in different ways.
It was around the pandemic when we realized that living with our times was starting to mean something different, something bigger, something about joy being removed from all of us and our ability to share these moments of enchantment being taken away. And so it really became even more important to put that forward and kind of celebrate and encourage the importance of togetherness, shared moments in real life that we could experience. We dreamt of coming out of all of this in a better world, out of this global tragedy. During that time, we were seeing that we needed more collaboration than the actions of others would have a direct impact, potentially, on my ability to live or not. But things, in many ways, only got worse. The earth is burning. Wars are multiplying, whether it's climate or otherwise. We're seeing kind of disasters overlap.
And the stakes are high. We're living in times of acute anxiety, misinformation, and global polarization. It may be the end of our civilization if we don't come together. And so, we do agree on one thing, is that everyone is lonely, or 1 in 2 Americans. From Fox News to the UK's Minister of Loneliness, it is an epidemic that we're currently still tackling, and it seems volatile, but it affects physical health and mental health, and maybe the health of our civilization.
And so instead of coming together, what we're seeing is we're all kind of in our phones, in our virtual spaces, listening to people who kind of agree more with us. This picture is from a research phase of a project in Cambridge, Ontario. Spent a bit of time touring the city, interviewing people, talking with stakeholders, with the general public. And we ran into this man who comes up to us. We were a group, and he thought we were local. And he said, "Hey, I'm not from here. Where is everybody? Is the water toxic? And so is there a reason why this kind of riverfront is empty?" And so we started investigating. In North America, mostly people would be, in their backyards, in their routine, doing their own things. And then probably everywhere, we're kind of stuck a little bit online, and we're trying to break that.
So from collective experience, that was maybe our initial fascination. Maybe it's time for something a little bit bigger. Maybe we need something stronger to shake us out of our phone reality and push the therapeutic dimensions of our work in public space. And so learning from the musical swings, we've tried to see how we could make it a little bit more accessible in cities and see how we can find ways to reinvent the public bench. So we looked at those more traditional swing seats and see how the same music and synchronous activity could be played with if they were to spin a little bit and rock.
So again, trying to develop a language to communicate what the interaction idea was. We started making these miniature puppet videos to look and demo what the experience might look like. These little black squares, rectangles, would be little benches, and we imagined that people could spin them around, building on this idea of synchronous movement that we had learned from in the musical swings. So trying to imagine for ourselves what the result that we're trying to get to might look like, but also for the people who are willing to fund these projects.
So we embarked on a journey seeing how we could have the rocking sensation that is really soothing and lessens anxiety, coupled with music, and proposed it in a few competitions. And ultimately, first that was one render that did it, and ultimately ended up changing the shape a little bit and working the mechanism. So you can see you can rock, but with a little bit more push, you go into another quarter. So this musically created a nice base for a scenario. You can see here in our studio.
Kind of starting to test and iterate through the different versions and bringing that first video demo to life one step at a time, with the kind of rough mechanism in its first iteration. And driving everybody crazy at the studio as we do that.
It's just 5 minutes.
and so going back a little bit to that early render, I think part of the message is also kind of to keep going and trying. That specific project we pitched 3 times before we had an opportunity to get funding for it. And sometimes on competition and proposals, you submit something, and I don't know for you, but like there's this feeling that maybe it wasn't quite right. You didn't quite nail it.
I mean, when you look at the bench, it's hard to imagine the magic that they will create in a render, even if we have our beautiful little puppets, though.
But still, some other times you submit a proposal and you're like, they're the ones who are wrong. This was a good project. And so you keep going. And in the end, this one worked out. And so we created different permanent versions of the installation. This one is in South Bend, again in Indiana, and another version's been installed elsewhere. The design evolved since the first iteration.
The arch proved to be nice for visibility, but also to push and enabling more people to use it.
Different sound experience, working with kind of voices, processed voices.
So when people are rocking in synchronicity, those secret melodies emerge, the arpeggios.
As Melissa was showing in the mechanism earlier, there's a cam inside, which also makes the movement not linear, so you're not constantly turning at the same speed. If you want to do that, you have to push a little harder. But there's a resistance so that you can go back and forth easily.
There's actually magnetic brakes, so the more you push, the more they work to keep it slow and at a maximum speed. So there are very slow benches.
And so we need to kind of invest in these new infrastructure, defend some of these investments in more forms of poetry, and engagement in magic, and imagine, we hope, other ways that the world can be. Why can't the bench become a source of kind of joyful shared moment amongst people? We had the chance to do another edition. We're commissioned by the North Carolina Museum of Art to do actually a combination of both of these projects, and the musical swings and the benches. And that's been interesting as well. I'll talk in a few minutes about some impact analysis that we try to do on our work. But in this case, really numbers came in and showed that when you have more than one of these opportunities to engage in a different way with your environment and with each other, people lean in more, and the results are really amplified overall in terms of the effect it brings in the sense of belonging and the joy overall.
And help to create a destination.
And so that joy is part of the quest that we're looking after. We know, this is from the United Nations World Happiness Report from a couple of years ago, that communities with high level of trust are generally more resilient in the face of big crises, tsunami, earthquake, accidents, or whatever it is. And that resilience, we all know, is critical and something we really have to try to seek. And so trust generates that strength ultimately, and the resilience can bring happiness, if that's something we're looking for.
But the big question is often, how do you create that trust between people? And we know that it's a widespread phenomenon, how we don't trust each other anymore. And actually, can we close the loop we see how happiness is helping to build trust and have a more vibrant system all around.
And so the joy that I can share with someone will be the foundation. And so these are the ideas we've been exploring and try to kind of go beyond the experience and understand in the last 5 or 6 years why we're doing what we do. This is the title of the talk, Strangers Need Strange Moments Together, where we've been exploring through a series of essays some of these ideas and helping us to push our own practice and the reasoning behind the work and the explorations.
So we launched a book this year, and we're trying to find a website for it. Thought Hello Stranger would be a nice short way to do it. We were a little bit surprised of the synonyms that the algorithms were sending to us. I think we have a lot of work to do, people.
We're not there yet.
How we're seeing strangers right now is quite scary. And so
Last night, we were not preparing our talk. We were out in exploring Namur and that city and came across, this poster in the wonderful bar we were in. And so the kitchen is made for dancing, yes, but everything should be made for dancing. Dance, cook, repeat, dance, work, repeat. Again, how do we reinvent the fabric of our city so that it can celebrate these moments? Another puppet video to convince someone else that we should transform their courtyard into a place of joy and enchantment.
And dance.
Each black dot will become a sensor on the ground. This is a puppet hand interface that will become a courtyard. 2 people interact with each other, make music, and then again, cooperation between more people generates more music.
So we're connecting sensors to create arpeggios, and the longer the line is, the more richer the arpeggio is, inviting everyone to take part.
Ultimately, the result is this project we called River Lines. And this is the scale 1:1 version of the puppet video, top view of a pavement that was installed in the heart of a courtyard in southern Ontario in Cambridge,
Canada.
And so the way these musical pavers function is you, again, step on one of the dots to make music and compose with each other.
Or roll and connect. So in this particular edition, the space needed to stay multifunctional. Then they wanted a big screen to have big hockey night. This is Canada. And so we saw an opportunity because in between events, the screen works with the artwork. So during daytime, it's an artwork, and whenever it's movie night or hockey night, we turn off the installation and bring on the play. And it's an added value to see the constellations that are created as people move.
I'm sure there are a lot of makers and designer artists, technologists in the room. And yes, kind of the challenge of maintenance and operation of a project like that, it rains, it snows, it freezes, it gets really cold, has been part of the work, making us kind of delve into kind of industrial design and product development, and really trying to embrace best practices to do that and develop a methodology over time to test and ensure we can provide projects that will last in time as best as we can, and it's a continuous exploration. Few images from this version of the project. This is the courtyard that became, in a new emerging neighborhood, a space to interact, and the music was quite similar than the fingers earlier.
The sound emanates from those squares on the ground, which are our custom-made sound tiles that we developed R&D at the studio, so that there's no visible hardware and can really be embedded in the experience. We needed a source of sound that was close to the different sensors so that people can understand what they're creating together.
The piece we created different iterations for. These earlier ones were installed in Dubai. We did one in Arizona as well, where not just the step-on, but one of the assets of the environment we could work with to create an interaction that was meaningful was the sun and people's shadows, or in the case of nighttime Dubai, kind of artificial light coming to life on the space. So working with shadows, there we go.
Different pavement, different music. We worked here with musicians from the region. to tell the story of the pearl divers that were in the area.
And so the pavement music was developed in collaboration with a friend of ours and Montreal-based Lebanese composer who recorded the musicians in Beirut and kind of really involved and developed a sound that was more local in a similar way than we did more recently in Budapest in front of the House of Music, creating kind of a version of the musical pavement inspired by the musical tradition of the cymbalom, traditional Hungarian instrument.
So here, more traditional sound in a contemporary composition that can be discovered and rediscovered in many ways through time, and making accessible this magic of making music together. So embedding in the city's fabric, we were interviewed once by our friend Paul Kaufbleich, and he was saying, it was right in the middle of the pandemic, and he was saying how what we were creating was infrastructure for the human spirit. And as we were working on those papers, it really does feel like infrastructure at times, because we are so embedded in many critical strategies to keep our cities rolling. Whether it's snow or rain, as Mouna was talking about, but the importance of keeping the human spirit at the heart of the conversation was quite telling. And infrastructure can be also mobility, of course, and what is an infrastructure for the human spirit when we think of how we move around in cities? You know, instead of making us want to go faster, can we have slow parasols that make us glide our way to work? Those were created originally for Florida and were presented in Montreal. And they were quite giant so that you can share them and testing new scenarios for collaboration in public space, sharing in a parasol, giving a ride to someone, or just sharing the shade. The notion of shade also is quite important today. Many cities, it can be quite hostile to be in a place where there is no shade, and unfortunately it's often areas that need the more help and that are facing this. So looking at
creating provocations as well. So, why are we all, not thinking outside of the box enough as we look for solutions for some of our urban challenges, and inviting artists in, like all of you, to make propositions that, might sound absurd, but if we don't kind of push the boundaries and the limits and explore what a pink gliding parasol might look like, we're not going to be able to really address some of the challenges we have in front of us. And so that impact, that capacity for change, that capacity to bring some happiness and joy is what we've been talking about since the beginning. No fun, no impact, but no impact, no fun, maybe. So in the last 10 years, we've been trying to think about that question of how do we qualify and quantify impact. Right now, we're completing for the second time an extensive social and economic impact study, hiring third-party researchers and inviting them into our process and giving them kind of free rein to come back to us and say, is that true that strangers are sharing moments together in the public realm around your installation? Is it true that you can influence and impact a sense of belonging, a sense of pride in terms of the place that people are in? Are people collaborating or not? And so these researchers recently, a team called Addendum, amongst others that we worked with, came up with a framework that was developed first I think in the UK under the banner of Social Value International. But many different organizations around the world are thinking about what is happiness, what is well-being, and how can we as artists and creators influence that. In our case, they determined that the projects that we were proposing could potentially, in that bigger realm of what well-being is in general, impact our relationship, that's what we're talking about, the quality of our environment and where we live. And so they went on to a process of interviewing more than 1,000 people on that. The results are starting to come in, giving us information about artworks being destinations, more than kind of 20% more interactions between people that would not have happened otherwise, and then 40 to 60% living through significant interactions with others. So overall encouragement to continue doing the work that we do, re-looking at the infrastructure and the world around us, such as this facade here. That was the Hello, Hello project facade, where initially we wanted to build on a project that we had done before, big luminous arches in the public realm, in this case trying to make them horizontal, realizing it was not the right approach, and ultimately designing for Cambridge, Ontario, this large Hello arch.
The resulting project is called Hello, Hello, and we tried to offer the entrance to this new district with a ritual, inviting people to speak in one of the 3 microphones and see how their voice transforms into music as a new way, maybe more courteous, to greet each other in public space.
Hola, hola. Hola, hola.
How are you? How are you?
So each of these microphones is an invitation to come and say hello. And this series of hello projects have been explorations on our communication capabilities, transforming messages, sending them around. This second version was done for the National Gallery more recently. And it's more of a spaghetti. We figure that the straight arch is a little off these days. Our ability to communicate feels a little more mumble-jumbled. And so the spaghetti version of hello also brings music and light to your messages, but in a metaphorically more
And it becomes a
complicated way.
game. Yeah, it becomes a game to follow your message in this maze of channels.
Hello, stranger.
Hello, stranger. Hello, stranger. Hello, stranger. Hello, stranger.
J'ai quelque chose à te dire.
Est-ce que tu m'entends?
Not really.
I'm standing right here.
So the last 15 years have been a lot about exploring urban context, and we wrote a book about trying to design interactions in public spaces. And then life throws something at you, and you're like, okay, you're writing about cities, try to do projects in forests now, obviously. And so the last year has actually been again about reinventing what it is that we do, and we'll give you a little sneak peek of, to end our talk today, of some of these more recent explorations.
We've had a chance to work in nature with cities a few times, and bringing back our biologists from the musical swings, telling us about the magic of how trees communicate together, and again focusing the conversation more on the mysteries, all the stuff we don't know and we think we know, and how we can create a moment of awe to take in nature instead of just trying to be cerebral with it, or not see it at all, often in public space. And so this is a forest in Hornby Island in the west of Canada, where we had a chance to do the forest mixer. It is another sound installation that transforms your voice into music, but here we're composting voices and sending them to a vibration platform so that the vibrations can go back to the soil. Inspired by the words of Robin Wall Kimmerer, who was talking about the pecan groves, where one fruits, they all fruits across large territories, and the mysteries of the synchronicity between the natural world. We were inspired to see how we can also create this sense of cooperation and symphony between participants in the forest. So we looked at sound ecology, inviting to listen to our environment in new ways, in deeper way, deep listening, at play, catharsis, the release of emotions, and also healing vibrations, as much as they are used right now to restore ecosystems. We know sound is used to restore corals down the oceans, and also how some tests are being done right now on how vibration can improve the quality of soil. So looking at these elements, and of course, ultimately, it comes to this. we created this voice composting system where you have an input and your voice transforms into harmonies and then slowly disintegrates and decomposes into vibrations that will enrich the natural soundscape. And form follows forest. This is a top view where you can see the installation circles, the big tree that is kind of the star of the forest, up to the vibrations where you have this beautiful view of a clearing next to the decaying trunk for where the vibrations are going back to nature.
And being able to do the integration as smoothly as possible without disrupting too much nature. The scan that you see here is the 3D scan of the environment that allowed us to do ultimately the piece and put it up. We'll watch a quick video and then do concluding notes.
In a forest, there are no soloists. 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 In a forest, what happens to one happens to all of us.
Sound happens to all of us.
What happens to one happens to all of us. What happens to one happens to all of us. What happens to one happens to all of us. What happens?
So quick clip. The project
That was 2 weeks ago.
This project in Hornby has been the opportunity, again, to rethink why it is that we do what we do and what our relationship to the world around us should be. How do we extend empathy for humans to empathy for all living things around us
Extend our understanding of community with all forms of life that surround us.
And so it's been that continuing quest, and I think working in nature has been one more challenge to think about these contributions and what we're doing right now in this world of crisis. I'll leave you on the second forest project that we just completed. This is Human Perches, Perchoir pour Humains, a series of 12 perches inviting people to take a closer look and mostly a closer listen at the sound around us. When we arrive in the forest, the birds and animals, they kind of run away. And so to help train our ears to listen back and listen to them when they're there in quiet, the perches you stand on and you can put your ear close by to hear the birds that would have been there a couple of years earlier. And so I like this image maybe of hope, of a younger generation that's engaged, something between tech and nature, bringing them together. They're looking away. And hopefully this is our best attempt at giving them a half-decent world and inviting them as well to reinvent how we live together.
And so thank you. We will leave you with this beautiful image of our book, because we're going to be signing it around 5 p.m. later if you want to come and check it out.
Also just chat if you have any questions,
Yes.
because I know we don't have time for Q&A, so we will be there. Happy to meet all of you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.